Agenda, sorry. So welcome everybody to our Venues and Communications Committee meeting today, 12th of October. First item is 36322, declarations of any disclosure of pecuniary interests. None disclosed, thank you. 36422, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Brain, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Hollis, and Councillor Jeremy.
Thank you. So 36522, minutes of the venues committee held on 13th of July, I see, were received in July. Obviously, we've had the August break and the Queen's death, which means we've not had a meeting since then. So hopefully they're all happy for me to sign those as true record. Yes, please. 36622, financial report update. David.
So we have two elements to this agenda item. The first one is to discuss the month end and also to receive a report from Alan, Finance Officer, in terms of a different format to look at the accounts of B&T. So I think if I just move on that slide. Yeah, so it's the first part is the current month end. And I think these are circulated before the meeting. So if there are any questions, otherwise I'll just go through one or two.
If you lead us through them, David.
Okay, so in terms of income, the sales for the bar income are higher than budgeted, with a bit of a slow start. The last couple of months have really picked up, and we've got back on schedule or above. There, the hall hire, however, is still a bit sluggish. Again, the first couple of months was still that sort of tentative return to normality, but again, looking forward, I can see that there is a trend to get back to some sort of normality. Certainly some of our regular hirers, our Wednesday evening dance session in the last couple of weeks has certainly got back to attendance numbers as it was pre-COVID a few years ago. So that's good news. So hopefully going forward, the last part of the year, we might be able to recoup some of our deficit to budget. Where are we? There is probably the critical one to look at is market fees. Again, we struggled and have been struggling over the last few years, although the last few weeks we've had a couple of new traders. We've also had some markets attached to some of the events. So again, there's a slight upturn to budget on that one. But it is a constant struggle to try and encourage traders to come to the market, and that's something we might talk about in a future agenda item. On the expenditure side, the biggest concern is in repairs and maintenance, but a lot of that has been through statutory requirements. So fixed wiring, for instance, usually happens every 5 years. Because we're a public venue, we have to have it every 3 years. We have done a lot of work in terms of trying to replace our old lighting systems with the new LEDs, which will have a knock-on effect in terms of reducing our energy consumption in the future. So yes, it is vastly increased sum of money we've spent, but there are elements of it that will have a knock-on effect in the future. Our entertainment licensing, again, is slightly up to projected budget. And again, that's because we are seeing on the event side a lot of tribute acts. Again, we'll talk about it in a future agenda item when we talk about venue hires and things. We need to address PRS. PRS is actually the liability of the venue rather than the provider, rather than the hirer or the deliverer of the artist. And that's something that we're going to look at in the future, in a future item. But we have to pick up all of those costs, and we've had quite a few of those over the recent weeks. So unless there's anything else,
I think on the floor.
Well, I'd just like to say how well the tea rooms are doing. I think we've really taken off up there. You know, sometimes you go in and you've got a little bit of a wait, which is a good thing.
I'm just coming from there in the school.
Yes, this is what I mean, and I think it's, you know, it was just sort of like Wednesday, Thursday, but you can now go in there on a Tuesday or a Friday, and it's getting packed. And the thing is, it's if you've got good staff and the business closes down, and then they need somewhere else to go, and they find that once they go in there and see that the prices are not a lot different, then they will keep coming back because it's a lovely venue. And, you know, easy access to the toilets, which a lot of people appreciate. So I'm to say, but well done on that score. And I think if it carries on, you know, I wouldn't say do anything yet, but I think if it carries on like this for all the next year, you need to consider an extra member of staff in there.
So, I mean, thank you for those comments, Brenda, but what I would say is we're trying to analyse which are our peak days, and in some respects, it's a good thing that we can't really say whether it's Tuesday through to Saturday, which day is the most popular. We did, because we launched some afternoon teas and we specifically looked at them for Wednesdays, we did take gave someone some additional sessional hours just for Wednesday. But Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they're all busy. We do have a sessional person that comes in on Saturday. So I must say the Ben team are all pulling together, and we do go over and try and give a hand to Becky at certain times, even if it's just servicing the teas and coffees and let her concentrate on food or doing some washing up and things like that. So we are, and at this moment in time, she's still sane. She's still coming through the door every day. So, you know, she's enjoying it.
Yeah.
But we do have to keep a close watch on that. But it's really, I went in there at 10:30 and well, Mike was a regular attender for the tea room a few months ago, and he will say it was past 11 o'clock before people used to walk in. But I went in there at 10:30 the other day, and there was one table left, it was packed. So it's great. We've seen as if we've turned a bit of a corner in the tea room, and long may that continue.
Mike, I think you ought to make comment.
Just want to quick add to that. Is there a policy regarding putting tables outside in front?
So certainly on market days, the new market supervisor, Simon, is very good at making sure everything's clean and tidy out there. He sort of makes sure he gets rid of the leaves and things, so people are not sitting there in the swirl of fallen leaves. And he puts the table and chairs out. What we need to do is to try and make sure the team also on decent days get tables and chairs out there on other days. Because, as I said, it's getting packed inside, and some people don't mind sitting outside.
They would have been used today.
Yeah.
So might be additional income to be found there. But I agree with the general comments. It's grown very well. Partly, I think, also because one of David mentioned, she is very pleasant. She's just a nice person, ideal person to be doing that job, and I think that helps the punters as well. You know, I go back home because of her. It's just a pleasant experience. It matters.
I think we were very lucky with Baber, who's now on maternity leave. She laid the ground for the tea room. She did a really good job, and it was a great handover to Becky. Becky brings some additional skill set, and you will see in the next few weeks the menus will slightly change to reflect some increased opportunities for people to come in by additional menu items. So yeah, all good stuff.
Yeah, I think I'll just add to Mike's comment about the outdoor seating whilst the weather is dry. I think you will still get, so we can get that put out there. Obviously, it's tea and rain, you're probably not going to do it. But the other thing is that the payment where it comes in is the opportunity there to put a few tables in the large court as an overspill if we are getting demand filled in there.
So there's possibilities on certain days. As I said, we can't. There's no one day that you can specifically say that is busy. So Thursdays is another one that was traditionally not particularly very well attended, but now those numbers are increasing, and Thursday is definitely an area where we can get overspill into the large court. And it might be that we advertise afternoon teas on that particular day and dress the room to suit. So yeah.
And takeaway teas. I know Jenny got one, but she couldn't go to the person because she wasn't well. So we sat in the Guildhall in there.
Oh,
It was, yeah. But yeah, so that is another way forward. But obviously, if the sales of the takeaways, because a lot of people ask to take that, and I was looking online the other day, it's £30, it's really lovely. I think £30 a too. But you think, oh, well, but we need staff to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, again, it's another agenda item which talks about environmentally friendly stuff. We're looking at biodegradable packaging and things like that, but that is certainly something we've been asked for, which is really good. So again, it's an increased revenue stream that we need to.
Just a general point, we talked about the booking profile. We've had tribute acts. I was talking to Dave yesterday about are they coming forward for next year, and if not, what are we doing to try and fill some of those holes, which I think will do.
So so there was a couple of agencies that we worked with through this year. Some have worked, some haven't. Some of them are probably we need to do a lot more work. We've had a couple of, shall I say, niche type theatre productions. Some have worked, some haven't. So we need to try and develop an audience to sort of build up a core attendance in those areas. In terms of the tribute acts, what we are also doing is having a lot more dialogue with those prospective agencies. So, for instance, the conversations we're having is, we would love you to be at the Carnegie. However, something very similar was in the Carnegie only 3 weeks ago, and I think, so maybe can we look at a different date? So we're trying to map out their attendance at the Carnegie. Some of them have obviously taken a punt with the Carnegie, not really done their research, and we haven't, to be fair, talked to them enough. And we found out actually some of the venues they use in other areas of the country, 600, 700 and 800 seat venues. We have a maximum of 300, so we're never going to facilitate that. So, but having said that, we have seen that there is a core audience out there. And as I said to Stuart, we're getting better and better at delivering events. And if we look at the calendar far enough advanced, that we might be able to put them on ourselves. We're developing relationships with some of the bands that are coming to other events who want to come back to us. And we might sort of fill the gaps in the future with some of our own events rather than relying on agencies. So there's ways that we can tackle it.
And let's come quickly back on the tribute acts. I was really annoyed to Mr. Royal's one. If you haven't done the obviously younger than me. Is there any pattern which ones are working better, or I mean, do you feel there's any? Is it an age group thing, for example?
No, there's no real pattern in terms of this, the genre of music or tributes. I must admit, there have been a couple of ones that want to go into the 60s type of stuff, so Roy Orbison, some of the back to the 60s, and that has been more difficult. But I think it's an age group thing, and I think it's too early in coming back after COVID. We are talking to a group that will be coming back in the new year, and hopefully, as I said, attendances at Sir Rock on Wednesday have struggled, and that is the audience that will be looking at some of these events. They've now come back in the last 2 weeks in real numbers. So hopefully people feel more confident and they will return. We'll still give it a go, but there's no rhyme or reason to it at the moment, I don't think.
Right, Brenda, sorry.
Yeah, and waste disposal costs, can you explain that? Is that they've come to empty the bin like they would in our house? Or is it that they go by how much waste? Just so.
It's based on the number of skips that we have. So for the Carnegie Guildhall markets, where we have a turnaround of three big blue skips, I would say that the vast majority of our waste disposal is used by the markets. And again, I wanted to make the same point. We are going to talk about market fees and things like that. So we'll bring up waste services in that agenda item. But It is very expensive. The bins get tipped twice a week after market days. And I would say on a general, Carnegie probably only fills one bin. We have three.
Right, I'm going to draw a line under the financial report thing, and I'll ask Alan to present his pro forma accounts. Now, many members will remember we were talking about the layout of accounts and the information being given by them, and we were asked to go back away and think about differently presenting. I've had discussions with Alan over the last few months, and Alan's given it further thought. What we've got this trade-off. We don't want to create so much work around that we end up for the sake of analysing £5, you spend 50 quid, do it. At the same time, the comment was made, we need the information to address and make decisions. So I wanted to say no more, and let Alan just to guide us through what he's got there. So hopefully we've got a proof set in front of you all to Alan to talk to.
I think what I've done is I've given you three documents. The first one is this graph. And the reason I want to start off with the graph, because I think it puts a lot of in context. If you have a look at the graph, you'll see what David mentioned earlier on, how the beginning of the year was a little bit dire. You will see that when you look at bar sales, just over £2,000, you look at the tea room and you look at the higher income, we actually had exceptionally low income in April and May. And then you'll see the trend. This is not cumulative, this is month by month. And you'll see that in all of the instances, all our income has actually increased. Now, the reason I want to just point this out to you is that the financial accounts that I'm going to present to you is an average over the 5 months. Because we closed off at the end of August, we did stock takes, we did full stock takes in the bar and everything else, so that we could produce accurate figures. So the figures that I'm using is not the September going forward and saying, well, that's the situation. You've got to understand we had quite a tough first few months of the financial year, and that impacts when you start measuring profitability, which is what we're trying to do, and commercial activities in terms of doing that. So if you can just bear that in mind. The second document that I've distributed to you is this one here. It's a set of management accounts. And what we did, I had a discussion with Stuart, we tried to divide B&C operations into what is a kind of semi-commercial, commercial aspect and what is the non-commercial. And what we've done is we've actually I've produced a set of accounts. If you look at the first one, the very left column, the actual year to date, in blue, sets out our trading performance. So it sets out the bar, the sales, the cost of sales, tea room sales, cost of sales events, hiring of venues and the box office, and to get to basically what we call it be a gross surplus or gross profit. And you can see how that, what we achieved, what we budgeted, what the variance is, what the 2023 budget is. And then what I've also done is I've just pro-rated it and saying if you average up the last 5 months and then project it for 12 months, the column on the right-hand side would present that. So, if things take into account we had 2 tough months at the beginning of the year, if we just average that out, we're going to achieve a gross profit of 56,253 at the end of the year if things stay proportionate. Then what we've done is we've gone through and we've actually allocated our costs, and I call them variable overheads, but they actually semi-variable. And the reason I say that is because if you take, for example, if we have an event, if you have one person sitting behind, caretaking and actually serving behind the bar, whether they sell £100 of drinks, £200 of drinks, or £300 of drinks, it's still that one person. You don't necessarily say, okay, well, we're going to increase staff, or we're going to cut staff if we've got 2 staff members there. And what that does, I put that down, and this all agrees to the accounting records. And I gave Stuart the assurance that if I did this exercise, I would be able to create an audit trail. So if someone wanted to come and have a look at how we got the figures, I'd be able to take it off the payrolls, off our Sage software. So all these figures are on agreement with that. And what this shows is that at the end of, for the first 5 months, we've actually made an overall loss of variable overheads of £10,000 and £10,047. And if that continues till the end of the year, we'd make a loss of 24,114. But you'll see from the trends in sales, and that's why I come back to that graph, hopefully that's not going to materialize because we're going to continue our upward start leveling out later on in the year, if it does level out, but hopefully it's going to increase. Then the last part of the second last, if you turn over the page, you'll see this is the overhead that we would allocate. Now, you have to be very careful when you look at these overheads, because these overheads are not, they relate, I just allocated them to V&C because, that would be a fair basis of doing it. But you've got to understand that these overheads remain. If we got rid of V&C tomorrow, these overheads still remain. All that would mean is that allotments or amenities or whichever other committee, if we were doing the same thing for them, they would pick up a higher percentage of the cost. Mm-hmm. And that just shows that, at the end of the day, we run a loss after overheads of £67,000 for the first 5 months. And if that continued, we'd run a loss of 156. But that, like I say, is just allocating on a fair basis the overheads, and it shows some of the overhead costs that we incur: electricity, water rates, waste disposal costs, equipment and maintenance. And the only figure that I can put hand on heart on and say that if you could question my allocation as insurances, because we don't have asset values or any other basis, I've actually had to do it on a revenue basis, which anyone could challenge. But the rest of the figures have been allocated out on a reasonable basis. The last part of this is what I call the non-commercial activity, and that is we have two. One is we have the markets. So I put all the costs related to the markets. So our markets run at a loss. You'll notice that I haven't allocated waste disposal costs. They're sitting in the other overheads, but I couldn't apportion that. But we really don't know. We're just making assumptions that the market traders are using 2 of our 3 bins. And then the last thing is the other functions, which is the marketing, the communications, the meeting support that part of David's team provide to the council as a whole, and I just allocated out those particular costs. And all this, like I say, I can tie this back. You'll see some of the numbers. If you read, if we were doing this in September, a lot of the numbers you'd find in the financial report that David has issued. So I'll stop there for comment.
Okay, firstly, I'd like to thank Alan for putting efforts into this. This is something that I felt that he probably gave more to it than I expected to do, because I was very conscious I didn't create work for Alan, and it was more how do we look at the existing format of the accounts that we had, and Alan was very rightly, some of those we pruned them all back a few years back, and we probably pruned them back a little too much, so that you didn't get the detail and the allowance. So Alan's done a lot of work analysing pro-rata and that. So I'm concerned in 2 respects. One is the amount of work that it causes Alan going forward, but also whatever we decide today, whether we like the format of these, we still need to be mindful of other committees may want to look at their pro formas, and finance needs to bring it all together to say, well, this works for this committee or doesn't work for that, or some of the things that are sitting in here may be better put in another committee. But I think we've made a lot of ground to address the issues and what we were asked to do to give an idea of the management of our entities that work. Obviously, the tea room was something that I think really drove the argument quite a while back, and we've all just earlier said how well it's doing. We can see that with numbers there, and I think we're up to August here. If we look through September, that would be even better. So having the format we've got there, I think allows us to understand a little bit better that is an entity that is doing well, and we can monitor that on an ongoing basis. I will stop and let others speak. Mike, I think you.
Thank you. 2 things. The first is a quite straightforward question to David. Yeah, I agree. Thanks so much for this. Your section is an unbalanced party. But what it's for. The revenues for the hire, I wonder whether either would be able to say, it might, sorry, David, it could be, I'm not sure which of you. What I'm looking for is where is that in the generality of time? So over 3 or 5 years, is that, are we making less now on than we were, say, before COVID? Or
So when we get to the last agenda item, which is determining our forecast for next year, you will see that we've In terms of venue hire, we've been a bit coy, but certainly if you look back to 2018, 2019, where I've taken a lot of my information to prepare the forecast budget, we did generate this kind of bar income, for instance, in 2018-19. We generated 38,000, I think, something like that in hire, but that was across both venues. So that was Guildhall and Carnegie, whereas in the forecast budget for next year, we've stripped it down and tried to identify both venues. But again, you know, realistically, if we were back to normality, we would certainly be at a higher level. It has affected all hire for obvious reasons. So we should be pushing towards the 40,000 plus on both of those.
I think it might also come in. What we have done is previously we were recognising all the revenue we have received. So if you go back into the 2018-19 and you look at that revenue, that was revenue received. The event might have been for 12 months' time. Whereas now what we've got is we've got true revenue. This is the revenue that we've actually earned. We marry it up to what you know, we take the events and say, what events happen? This is how much is in the order book. We release it from the order book because that's the right way of doing it. So that would distort it because in some months, you know, we might receive, at the moment our order book is £8,000. And the previous year that would be sitting in revenue. So you'd be saying, well, our whole higher income is actually up. But it really wasn't because we were counting for future money that we hadn't even earned it. So if you have a look at the third page, which is this forecast, and I'm taking the liberty of sneaking this in, Chair, because I forgot to ask David to put the agenda. You don't have to make a decision on it. This is just a little bit of history, and you'll see all the years are there. And you've got whole hire is 4206 is there. You'll see the figures, and you'll see the impact of COVID. If you look at 2020-21 and 2021-22, you'll see that COVID had quite a significant impact on the operations of VNC. And I always like to make the point that when COVID hit, it's because we lost income from VNC in particular. We lost, you know, probably 35% of our council-wide income. And because we as a council, you know, other councils were dependent, you know, their income is 90% of their precinct. In our case, it's a lot lower. We really suffered, you know, so I think that just gives you the impact that the VNC does have on the general financing of the council. And you'll see those figures, like I said, they speak for themselves. These are actual figures. These are what come up, you know, get audited every year, etc. So there is quite a significant impact.
The other thing to say going forward is that in 2018-19, we didn't have a Guildhall, which is as accessible as it is now. We didn't have the value of, I mean, I've just done a sort of internal presentation to the VEM team to look beyond, and that presentation talks about 3 venues, 1 vision. So 3 venues is the Carnegie, the Guildhall, and the Marketplace. We never had those to look at. Carnegie was our main venue, and that's what's generated most of the income. We really do have an opportunity to generate a significant amount of income from the Guildhall as well. But it's dependent on everything coming into a positive alignment. So we're not going to go back into a lockdown. We're not going to do anything like that. But we've got an opportunity to really, to use a cliche, sweat the asset.
Sorry, Chair, like I said, but the Town Hall has asked me to do another kind of version of this closer to the year end, and I'll certainly, closer to the calendar year end, then December, you know, possibly January, and we'll table another one, and it'll be quite interesting to see. Hopefully, those trends that we've identified now will actually turn the Guildhall commercial activities into a net contributor to overheads, rather than just, you know, slightly adding to them, which they're doing at the moment.
My question, and obviously the format you've laid there are some costs in there now which we wouldn't have had under the normal.
There's a number of costs. You would have waste disposal costs. Those costs are all sitting in personnel.
Exactly.
And all we've done is done an allocation. So I've done I've used accommodation percentages. So we've got BVR, that smaller portion. I've excluded them from the allocation of costs, and we're just left with the cost. Because things like the rates bill, we have one rates bill for the Carnegie and the Guildhall. We have another rates bill for the office where Freeze used to be upstairs, and that's it. And the Marketplace has 3 rates assessments. we've just kind of tried to take the Carnegie one and said how much of it's using admin, how much of it's
So
using.
really, in reality, you've made it a more accurate reflection of.
I have made a commitment at the SMT meeting that I stand by this, except for insurance. Someone could come and challenge the insurance number, but we paid £11,000 council-wide for insurance, and I've allocated a data income.
So what I see is this is a trial basis, a look at this, present it towards the end of the calendar year for us to review again, but with a view that post the financial year, we will start looking at the thing for all committees.
Yeah.
So that if you added up all your committees, that comes to your total for the council.
I mean, I have to go back to finance.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but that's how you'd see
discussion.
this play out, rather than us adopt this partway through. We look to whatever decision is made for finance, that with the new reporting mechanism in place post 31st of March.
Well, I'll give you.
We'll have this pro forma for us to address in December. Dennis,
Well, and as somebody who's not completely okay with financial things and everything, I find it's a lot clearer than the other ones, and these bar charts are just good indicators. I mean, they're not everything, but yeah, I think the whole thing, I think it's a good job. I think we need to it needs to be taken to finance to see what they think about it.
any other comments? Right.
No, I was going to move on to a second separate issue.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. It's the comment you made about the work involved in servicing this committee that Alan has to do. I'm just wondering whether we've got it quite right. I mean, certainly as an agreement, for those who are not financial experts, very helpful. So Alan services all the committees, possibly the exception of planning, which doesn't have much expenditure. So it has to do this kind of work for every committee, and both personnel and finance have a kind of overview, and then there's the full council. I just wonder whether it's a bit cumbersome and whether there's anything we could do, maybe having a discussion about it in full council or an open finance meeting or a meeting of the chairs of all the committees to say, is there any way we can get the same information or the information we need in a format which might be more labour-saving for Alan? I mean, I think it's very good, but every committee does spend a long time each month discussing finance. They've clearly got to have an update on whether they're keeping within their budget. It seems to me that's the key issue on a monthly basis. And I just wonder whether we've got the balance right at the moment, whether we're actually spending too much of Alan's energy and committee time.
I quite agree with what Mike said, because you, as a committee, you have set your budget. So the chair and the officer will look to see if somebody's come up with something. Have we got that in the budget? If not, we can't do it, or we'll have to put that back to the following year. Because to me, personnel and finance are doing it, do most of the finances behind the scenes. Because at the end of the day, this council is about what our presets are going to be in the future. And am I wording this right? So what the precept's going to be in the future on the overall running of the council. That's why in every committee you will see that you get headlines about your waste and everything else. It's just so that you are aware that you have to pay into that pot. If just say, for example, we own the tennis court. The tennis court that we've got, they have to prove that that we have to explain to that committee that they are putting into the pot of waste disposal, electric, everything else. I think it's nice to have this, but I just think that across the council, then if you're really into finance, then join the finance committee. I just think that it's a lot. If you've got to go away and do this every month, are you going to get any back?
Alan, please come back, because you're at the sharp end of this, and you know what, because I think you and I understand, once you've got a system set up, then it's the things should drop out a lot easier. Whether we have to present it every month is another matter. And also, other committees may say, well, actually, I don't need this. I only need about 4 headings to do that. So I think each individual committee needs to be talked through and you to come back. Because I think we've done a lot of work here to lay the ground, but it may be not appropriate for all committees. So
I don't think it is, but I think what I mean, there's two things that we really try to do at times. One is to get the transactions recorded in the right period and to get it timely. You know, I mean, this report, you know, the financial reports that you have, we've worked really hard to make sure that all the sales are in for the month. You know, that's the hard part. Doing the reporting is actually not that difficult. And I think the chair of finance at the moment, who's been chair since I've been employed by the council, has the viewpoint that the committees need to own. Finance doesn't own the numbers. You know, we don't own it at all. You know, the committees own it. And I think that's really what's been driving how we've been doing it. So it looks really onerous, and, you know, I actually telling you how long it takes me, but I wouldn't be, you know, because it's all set up, it actually is relatively easy to do. It's just the timing. You know, this month is a really tough month because the first working day of the month was last Monday. You know, so if you'd asked me to do management accounts for September, there's no way I would have managed to do it. But if we can do it, this setup on a 3 monthly basis, it will be relatively easy. All the research work, all the measurements and all that have all been done, and we'll just continue to refine it as we go forward. So I'm not too worried. You know, there's, you know, I am seeing, you know, I'm happy to work extra hours to do this, and I think it's interesting, and I think, you know, David will bear this up. I think when I had a discussion with him around this last week, I think he found it useful. So if management find it useful, that's really is the cherry on the cake, because, you know, I think David said he's going to change the way he prepares the budget, possibly to start reflecting some of these things, and then it's a win-win situation.
David, I know you want.
Okay, well, I just want to ask one question, and that is just to pick up Mike's point. It's what, as a committee, what are you expecting to address on a monthly basis? I think quarterly you could probably have a bit more in depth. But for instance, and it was interesting to hear Dennis say that he found that graph very interesting. So if it's a scrutiny thing, so if we were sitting here in August and you've got your downturn on your bar, the questions of a scrutiny committee would be, why did that happen? What is the reasons for? Is it a downward trend? Is it something that we need to worry about? Or how are we going to address that and turn it around? Clearly, we did turn it around. I think there was a couple of cancellations in August, and that was the reason they were bar events, which had that dip under. But as you can see, September is starting on the upward turn again. So if you want me to put in some graphs, so when we look at, it's very difficult when you look at numbers like this, but you can certainly come up with questions when you're looking at graphs, and you can ask me, why was that, David? What was the problem? Or if we have a downward turn, what are you doing to address a downward turn? And then once a quarter, we have that in depth. I mean, I think Mike said that the last meeting, and maybe we look at on a reasonably regular basis and have an in-depth scrutiny of the tea room, for instance. I think that was what you talked about, and that would be good because actually we've turned a corner and we can show how we've done that and what we can do in the future.
That's picking one item every now and again, which is a good way to do it. Not everything.
But I must admit, and I mean, we sit in committees, and when finance reports come up, you know, they're circulated prior to the meeting. Have you any questions? And it's very difficult. But I think if you saw some of this, I'm sure you'd have more questions to ask. So we can certainly put together graphs that might. And there are only, you know, 4 or 5 key elements to income generation in V&C, so it's not a big ask, really.
Could I just, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the key thing for any committee is their budgets. So, you know, are they staying within budget? And I think that's the key thing they should be looking at month on month. Wait a minute, this is dropped. What are we doing about it? You know, when you see something dropping, I can't give an example at the moment, but anyway, something's dropped. So we need to investigate why. And I think that's the key thing to any committee, is that they set the budget, they should be looking after it. And I think that's what the chair of finance is trying to say, is your budget, you know. The look after it. If you're going to come back to the council because you've spent that budget, there's got to be a bloody good, sorry, there's got to be a good reason why you've done that. It could be a big health and safety reason, but you know, there's got to be a good explanation, especially in this day and age. I've overspent my budget, but why? You know, and I think that's the key thing that any committee should be having every month.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, I went to personnel yesterday, and if you look at their budget figures, hugely in terms of numbers, sheer numbers, the thing that matters is staffing. To be honest, everything else is pretty irrelevant, really. Staffing's like 67% of the total budget. And I think there are dangers in that. One is that we spend time talking about 5,000 quid here and there on something else. We don't spend the relevant, we don't spend the same pro rata amount of time talking about spending 650,000 on staffing. You know, it leads to us discussing trivia, effectively trivia. The frustration is, of course, it's very hard to change the staffing budget. I mean, you know, it does. I wonder whether that's actually puts us off from discussing it. So we need to be saying, I think, we spend more time talking about the big issues, specifically. I think Brenda had the idea of resurfaced of picking a few things each time. I also wonder whether Alan could, if we went to the quarterly idea, which David suggested more in depth, it might be possible for us to say to Alan, if you think there are concerns, we should not leave 2 more months, but bring them up the first opportunity. Is that something that Alan could do or would welcome to do? So maybe we find a way of focusing the discussion on the more important things. That's what I'm saying.
So on a monthly basis, potentially you could still have your reduced format, but with a commentary if there are various things that you know of. So say that you've had cancellations too. You know, we're a little bit, if we don't get those going to be well under for the year. Yeah. And then have a quarterly in-depth look where we can question things if necessary. Are we happy with that way forward? Obviously, what we need to do is just ask the officers to send that out with USNT and what they may have different views or say, well, the other committees won't. But obviously, what we have got is salary element included within this detailed format, which will include what personnel's got in there. So personnel will still want to see the overall staffing costs, and then it'll be presumably aligned, less recharge to committees now. They see it that way.
Well, at the moment, we're still doing it in totality because it's the only way we set the piece it. And I think that's why they rationalised the accounts, because there was all this recharges and money moving. You know, if you've got one invoice, you had to put to 10 different codes. And I have to admit, you know, from a selfish perspective, it's so nice to have one code to put an invoice to rather than break it down into 5 or 6 codes. But
that would be, I'm trying to get to is that personnel would be the only one where you have to look at the sum of the parts.
You would break it down.
Whereas all the other stuff would be allocated.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
The danger of that is that is the one element, which is this, you know, is this grey area. I mean, you know, I can't talk for personnel, but maybe and the council's on personnel, but maybe that's something you need to address with personnel. I mean, there is a standing joke within the staff, and we've taken a new recruit on to take Tom over, and you know, and obviously the point of his induction at the moment is to understand what his job's going to be, and other staff are saying, but you get hired for one job and do things, and that is the problem. I can't think of anyone apart from possibly Becky, who is stuck in those 4 walls, that you could be that focused on one particular job.
But I would hope that we're appreciative of that, and that when we look at the salary, we know that there's a person whose costs are sitting there, but they're then doing a lot of outside and
Yeah, and I think,
and you don't want to get to a situation where you're billing every
Well,
half an hour.
you don't, I mean, my comment, in an SMT meeting once, I mean, I worked 6 years in a solicitor and they were classic, you know, when the phone rings, they press the timer, you know, to bill a certain individual. We don't want to go down that route, and we don't want to go down the route if someone is just going to be resistant in playing the team player role. But what Alan's done is he's done a really great job in identifying relative percentage support to VNC. But it would be interesting if you rolled that out, and I'm not advocating that, Alan, because I know how much work you put into this, and it will be a huge amount of work. But it'd be interesting to see that actually where some names are on there supporting VNC, there's some of our VNC team who support other areas. So, you know, I think from a councillor point of view, I think that would be a good exercise because you'd understand the diversity of people's roles.
But I think we also got to be very reliant on the professionals of Alan to come up with a reasonable basis for recharging these things.
Yeah, and he's done a great job, I think, in terms of understanding that and giving you an idea. But it's a complicated.
Yeah, and I think it always needs a warning to be gone. So it is on allocation rather than.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you an example, it's not being on maternity leave, sitting in the variable cost, because that's where they're based. So even though we get no benefit out of them for the next 6 months, we pick up the full costs. Yeah. You know, sure, we get a little bit back to government, but it does sit in that variable cost. So again, that's why you're going to be, as you say, statistics, as they're saying, you know, lies, then statistics, whatever it is. You have to always be conscious, and as much as I hold hand on heart, there is a little bit of subjectivity in the way we do it. Mm-hmm. The last thing, if I could ask, I have to produce a revised budget for finance committee, and I'll be going to all the committees, and this piece of paper that I distributed here is a revised forecast for VNC. And all I've done is I've just basically used history. You know, as I said at personality side, I've used a little bit of historical costs and then said, this is what's happened in the last 5 months. I put September's actuals in because I have those now, and then I just forecast till the end of the year. And I have to put this to a document to finance, and I'd just like to say that at least the committees are aware of it. I don't really need you to approve it because that would be extremely unfair of me to do that. But just for you to have notes of it, it is based on history, you know, so it is the last 5 months times by 12, divided by 12, and make some adjustments. I know Christmas, we have, you know, David's managed to secure some extra events, so I've bumped up the event income in December to take that into account. So those are the small adjustments that I've actually done. But it is based on what we know now and what's happened in the past.
I think noted is
no, I can't ask you to make it better.
and you know, in 2 months' time it'll be different again. So that's the thing. You know, thank you very much for doing that and giving us the indication.
The unknown.
Okay, so we'll call a day on that one then. So,
Excuse me, please.
thank you. You're going to go back and do some more analysis, Alan. Thank you. We're on to 367 marketing report.
Yeah.
David's in the chair on this one.
Well, and it's afraid for Hazel. Hazel, unfortunately, is unwell at the moment and has been on sick for the last couple of days, but she did manage to prepare the marketing report, and I think that's been circulated prior to the meeting. So it will, as I said, it's a poor substitute for Hazel because she could have embellished on a lot of points, but if you read the marketing report, she's done a brilliant job again, and we've had some significant successes. Some of our events, she is actually entering into a lot more dialogue with some of the third parties we're working with. And I know for the fact that they're really appreciative that she's trying to work with them to generate a greater attendance. Certainly our recent things, retro party on Saturday night, again, in the last few times they've had an attendance around about 100. And this time they were north of 160, so they were very pleased, and that's due to Hazel trying to further the marketing reach into other areas. And we had people coming from Wyndham and Attleborough, Diss and Brandon for a local theatre production that we had on in the Carnegie. So you know, we are getting out there to other forums and other avenues, and it is showing good levels of success. The other thing that we are really pleased with is, again, Hazel's been at the forefront of that with Emma, who is taking responsibility of wakes, christenings and weddings. And in terms of weddings, they have developed a digital turning page brochure for weddings, and that has gone live. And as a result of that, we've got 4 firm bookings for early next year, or the first half of next year, for weddings at the Guildhall. And we've got 2 further viewings this Friday for potential people that are going to hopefully book as well. So again, as I said, she's having some real good successes there. In terms of reach on social media, our Carnegie page has over 22,000 reach now, and the level of engagement, which is the most pleasing aspect, is over 50%, which is brilliant. Usually it's a heck of a lot less percentage rates than that. Most of our pages, Thetford Town Council page, again, has 2,300 followers, but again, a 21% interaction. The Guildhall Tea Room, again, needs a bit more work, but again, a recent campaign to advertise afternoon teas created such a positive reaction that it took us by surprise, really. But it's great that there is now a regular weekly feature, and as you can see in the previous agenda item, it's resulting in higher income. So again, that's a positive. Yeah. So whether there's any more questions on the marketing report, those.
Brenda, then Mike.
Just the one, because we're boosting up on the weddings.
Yeah.
If it was a market day, do you just push the market down one end so that the bride can actually come to the session?
Yeah. So the idea is, and again, the confirmed weddings are next year. So the idea of the planters is that they're movable. So those planter tubs, which will boundary the Guildhall Tea Room, can be moved and create a sort of a line of planters across the market. So the market would be squeezed out. We did it recently with the steampunk event. We obviously wanted an area, Guildhall end, to have all the traders and all the steampunk type activity. So the traders were quite happy just to push down, if they knew that there was more activity on the market. So they, we've been talking to them. They're quite amenable to that. But yes, you don't want to pitch up in a wedding car and
Walk across the road.
Yeah, or you've got the fish wagon there or something like that. It's so we will create an area where the wedding car can come and drop off the bride and bride's farm.
Great.
We're also developed a really good idea where everything can actually be facilitated within the Guildhall. So the upper gallery, they're even talking about using that as a bride's parlour. So the bride would actually spend most of the day at the Guildhall with makeup and hairdressing and all that kind of stuff. And then she would come down the stairs with the father, then enter the ceremony room in the large hall. And some of the wedding bookings that we've had have been really receptive to that. So again, over the New Year break, we will be improving the upper gallery to try and accommodate that.
Just one point on that, because Saturday is a good day for the tea rooms. How do we manage that? Because I wouldn't like to think I'm walking in another. So
I think there's a trend of most weddings now, and it is a cost thing. And with respect, the Guildhall's a lovely building, but if you've got an unlimited budget, let's face it, you'd probably get married in a big stately home.
Yeah.
But it tends to be sort of later on in the afternoon, so the tea room's closed at 2:30.
Yeah.
And really, we're trying to push people that way, because one of the other things that's going to boost the income of the tea room is outside those tea room opening hours, it will be the bar for a wedding. So they tend to sort of look to get married about 3 o'clock. They'll go off and have their photos, and then they'll either go off to another venue for a reception. Hopefully it will either be the Carnegie or the Guildhall, but we can turn the rooms around and they can.
Yeah, I mean, it don't matter if you shut half hour early, say, a wedding in process, come and say we're shutting early.
Still got
As long as you notify people, it don't matter. I just wanted to make sure that we're not sort of like building up ones to take the other one down. That's okay.
Mike,
Following up something David said, we fairly recently took on a member of staff, David mentioned by name, and she had been, I don't know, 70s and old toddlers, and she came into the house, and then suddenly she's doing 2 different things. And that's the SMT joke, that you can't do A, B, and C, you end up doing B. Agreed. But, a very big but, isn't it great that a small business like Thetford Town Council can effectively offer internal promotion? That means that people feel bought in to the organisation, they feel supported by it, and it may mean things like not having to move house, not having to look for a job out of town. So it can be financial and for other reasons very stabilising. So although it's an absolutely fair share, I think it's a really positive side to it too, and I'd love to see the Town Council doing that. It's a positive for our council. We're not giving the job to the boys, we're saying if this person's up to it, we give them a better job to do.
make their use of their skills, which,
And we have,
yes.
and to be honest, Hazel has drawn on those experiences with that other employer in the town, and it's improved our marketing. And also, as a team, we have our team meetings. She was the driving factor about the afternoon teas and how we promote them and how we deliver them, you know, and Becky was the person that had the skills to, you know, to do so. So I think we've got a good little team developing.
I think it's teamwork. You're all messing together. You know, you might not have the skills, but you're learning the skills. So actually, it does you a favour, doesn't it? When you're working in a team, and not, oh, this is my job, sitting answering the phone. Let's get on to do something else as well. You know.
Couple of things from me though. One we talked about yesterday, give us pictures of the team being full.
Yeah.
And keep that ball rolling.
Yeah.
Talking to the market traders with events that are coming up before. So if you've got a special steep hunt thing, get the flyer for the market traders to take away in case they're at another market and they get into conversations. Oh, they've got this coming up. So that they feel part of the delivery as well. Yeah, that we can get that. And then in terms of engaging with the local tourism providers of what's going on, you've got a poster here, you know, the events coming on. We talked about having a quarterly flyer or something with these stand-up things that would go into hotels and bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Where are we?
So we are doing that. We are taking those small. So this is replicated in I think it's B3 size, that size flyer, and then it's put into a little dispenser. They are going out to various different outlets in the town centre. We need to improve that. We need to find ways that we can get them into other towns for, you know, for, as I said, there are people coming in from Wyndham, Attleborough, Diss, Brandon, Mumford to some of our events, and we know that. We're doing some analysis on that. So we are doing it, Stuart, but we do need to improve that. We do need to get it wider. One of the other things that we have conversations with people when they say, you know, I didn't know the event was on, or where would you look for those events? And a lot of the time they do say poster sites. So again, we have to address that. One of the things that is ironic is that we are putting more and more events on, and we still haven't got that poster site on the Guildhall, on the marketplace outside the Guildhall. The works team will have that up in the next couple of weeks, so we're going to put that just outside the steps. So, but we do need to find other areas where we can.
Just had a conversation with the lady at the kiosk, you know, and she said the visitors they get, they sit down and have a cup of tea, they're staying in Thetford, and potentially, you know, what we do is not, oh, I've got nothing planned. So if she had something like that, that's all you want to be doing that, because we need to, you know, we've talked about this before, about having people in hotels, taxi drivers, as ambassadors for the town to be a bit more up to speed with what's going on in the town, so that you can service those people.
So funny enough, I had a conversation on Sunday with her daughter-in-law, which is the partner in the business, and they had a similar conversation. And so we are going to, and what they really are crying out for is to get their promotion as well. So when we do some town-wide events, we'll make sure that we embrace them and have something going on as we drive footfall there. But also she did say to me as well, she's quite willing to have some leaflets. Funny enough, there was about a dozen cyclists that turned up, and she said she quite often gets people who are in the area for a while to do various different activities. So yeah, we are talking to several people, and also we are now talking to a lot more businesses. And this Christmas we have some additional sponsors for our Christmas events. So again, we might be able to get the information out through businesses. Our Christmas parties, for instance, and now I was saying about some additional events further in the year. We did allocate 2 Christmas party nights that we were delivering. We've had to put a third on because it's so popular. So we've only got about 50 seats left, if you like, out of the 3 evenings. So again, most of those are being purchased on block by companies. So again, we're going to use that opportunity to further those connections with those organisers and hopefully try and get our information out further.
Scotty did it, so I just finished. Just along these lines of sharing that information, I did talk to Julius with the possibility of a quarterly cup of tea or something, get together in a guild or with the representatives from something like the Bell or herself or that, to say, well, this is what we're doing, or if the Bell have got a load of theme nights coming up, so that she'd be aware of it. At the moment, we're all doing these things in isolation, to somehow get kind of communication going. Because word of mouth, if you've got a group of cyclists, there's 20, 30 people there you want to give a message to. If she's going to be that person, point of contact, you want her to say.
And actually, they're benefited by the pit stop, if you like, to have a cup of coffee. But actually, if they're here for a few days, they'll cycle through the day, but they maybe want to come to
or make a point of coming back just specifically for something they've seen on there.
So I haven't actually seen that. What is that?
Well, this is, so basically we have quite a lot going on. We've never been able to do this in the past, but we have been doing it for the last few months. So these are the kind of events that are on in our venues, the Carnegie or the Guildhall, over the next 3 months. So once it gets past the 2 months, we'll move this one. So we do this, 8 times a year, I think, something like that. So people can see this and plan ahead. So they can see they can see when the Christmas lights switch on, even though it's still October.
I can see when Roy Orbison's coming back.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, what I was getting at is when we say having the post little ones in places, that's a good idea for the Bella Hotel, any business that does things similar to us, like events, that actually you could do that program between you. So that they might paint in a couple of bobs. So I don't know. The Thomas Paine has got something going on. That's in there as well. The Bell's doing something. Somebody else doing something. But you all plan it. We might get the overall cost because we've got more events. But it's doing it together.
I'm not sure. I'm not. I don't know. I think I've got it right. I'm not sure we want to go down the route of being the marketeer for everybody's events, because I don't think Hazel's got the time. But certainly we should be talking to each other. We should be so we're aware of what's going on, because we all have especially the town council, a duty to have a thriving town. So whether it's in our venues or not, we should be pushing that. But I'm loath to we have a digital turning page newsletter now, and I'll just relay a comment if I can without being too open with names, because not. But so what we do is we have a bi-monthly newsletter that we send out to. At the moment, it's between 500 and 600 subscribers. So they have asked us to keep them informed every 2 months with all the things that's going on. So we send via email a digital newsletter. We try to dress it up a bit so it's a little bit more readable rather than just a load of posters. So we give a little bit more information about the event. And then we also touch on some of the good things that we've been doing as a town council. So Thetford in Bloom is highlighted for this newsletter. But I must admit, we did have a hire of the Carnegie who phoned Hazel to say she didn't want to be in the newsletter. And she said, why? Because you're going to charge me for it. And we said, no. Why would you not charge me for it? Because I've hired the venue and I'm selling tickets and it's my event, it's not your event. But you're in our venue and we want you to be successful. And if we were really looking to be, commercial, if you like, if your event is successful, it was a bar event, we would get a better bar than 30 people turning up. So we want you to be successful. So it's funny that, someone had the impression that if we were going to do these things, that we would start charging for inserts. We're not going to do that, and I don't really want to do that. So when you say that if we were advertising Thomas Paine, somebody might want to pay to go in here, I'm not sure whether we want to do that at the moment, because
I think we stick to what we've got, put it in because we've able to just do it in-house, it's not that costly to do those leaflets. So I think we'll just take that, if we get the dispensers out there, that'll be the start.
Yeah.
Dennis, I'm conscious that you want to come in.
Well, it's probably for not. We seem to have, there seem to be posters and big signs up around the town about some of our events and everything. There's one on the Norwich Road on the fence of Liddell's. There's a great big
is it one of our events?
It's it says in the Carnegie.
Oh yeah.
It's a comedy night at the Carnegie.
So we have conversations with, so that's not our event totally. It's not like our Christmas parties that are totally our event that we're organising and delivering it. A comedy club or a tribute show and all the rest of it will be a third party that's hiring our venue. But one of the things, and we have a couple of these issues, we always tell them you can't fly post. Or if you do put something, you have to ask permission. So we've had those conversations. So if I know that, then I know who the organisers are of those, and I'll have those conversations in the future.
My issue is that as I walked on today, I saw this thing. I thought, well, who does that belong to? Because it's folded over halfway now, and you can't see. It's just hanging there.
Yeah.
And
that's the danger of fly posts.
So I lifted it up, and it's a good solid vinyl thing. It's not a piece of paper. It's a big a long-lasting vinyl side.
The problem with fly post is they don't tend to go back after the event to take them down.
Yeah. But this must have cost them quite a bit of money to have this made up. It's about that long, about that big, it's solid vinyl. But now you can't. It's useless being there. It's just unsightly now because it's.
Yeah, I think we just need to make that message, and obviously David is making it, that you can't just put that. Then we can't be associated with it and encouraging it.
No. But it says Guildhall.
Yeah, that's the danger.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, well, if we could, sorry, Mike, I'll come to others. Who designs the name?
Tom.
Okay.
So Tom's leaving now, so that's another job that Hazel will inherit.
Oh,
But that's also replicated in a really, so if you look on the side of the Carnegie, that massive great poster sign will have that as a big version.
These posters are presumably normally A3. So on this particular format, we've got 12 of them, so it's about 1/15 of A3 each. I think there are three things you want to know when you see a poster. One, what's the name? Two, if it doesn't already tell you the name, what's it about? And three, the date. And all my tiny comment is, you can't always read the date on this size of poster. And maybe Tom or whoever just point them and say, don't forget, sometimes it's going to be this size, and you need to be able to read the date.
Yeah.
So you've got the dates above there, Mike, on each one.
You've got the dates, but hopefully, as it says, these are like quick visuals, upcoming events, that something might be in a poster format.
All those three bits of information.
Yeah.
So, one is, when it says ASOL, it may not be ASOL. it's about, it's people who flow through it.
All right, yeah.
So unless you know what ASOF means, you're relying on picking up that this phrase here is also done. I just think maybe it's very ambitious to put 12 on a A3 sheet.
Okay.
I think the danger is just too much information and people walk past it, you know. So ideally, I would have 6 on them, and I know you should do them more often, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Right, so we've gone on to communications now, 36822. I think if we remember, we were talking about the media policy and things
Yeah,
like that. So
so-
we weren't in a position really to adopt this today.
No, so we did, so back in July, we talked about this and I was going to go away and try and make some of the adjustments that you were looking to, which I did. And we thought we were going to have a meeting in September, and events took over and we didn't. But in addition to that, the town clerk has received information about how the National Association of Local Councils are looking at the upcoming civility and respect agenda. I know they've got a presentation actually at the Carnegie. They've got on 22nd and 23rd of November. So she has asked me whether we can delay this, because there's clearly going to be elements of that discussion that we're going to have to pull into our media policy and community engagement policy. So I think this one might have to be the third chair. And I think what she did suggest is, because it's going to be such a big piece of work in terms of whether councillors want to adopt this, that and the other, that a small working group might look at it. But we're not in a position to know what.
So when is their presentation?
So I think it's November. So I think we're not going to be able to bring this back until January, very early.
And they are pushing that.
Yeah.
So in terms of a working group, would you see that sitting up after
That, yeah. So
as a November meeting, then potentially ask for volunteers? We've got a few bodies we can take.
and then we'll determine whether there's a sufficient time to bring it back in January. May even have to go off till February.
You happy with that?
I can't remember. Was that meeting open to all councillors or was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. They just keep sending me emails.
Right. Then we've got to 369, annual review of market top.
So again, in the July meeting, I did talk about as part of our terms of reference, there's 2 elements that we need to review annually. That's the market tolls and the venue hire fees. So this agenda item refers to the market tolls. We haven't actually raised the fees in the last 3 years, and before that, we only raised once in the previous 4 years. We are, as we've already mentioned, we are seeing a downturn in attendance, certainly in our market, but several markets are the same in the area. So it's a trend. So it's going to be tricky if we're going to raise prices of whether we can actually attract. So what I suggested is that we looked at something that we spoke about several years ago, and that's to try and simplify the calculation of what your fee will be. Because I think when someone goes on the website and they think, oh, I'm a trader, I'd like to go to Thetford market, it's 1.36, £1.36 per square foot. How much is it going to cost me? But I think most people know that a traditional gazebo, 3 metres by 3 metres, 10 foot by 10 foot, is X. And most of the people now trade in pop-up gazebos. So if they knew it was going to cost you £12.50 every market visit, as a casual trader, I know. There's always been this referral from people to say that the reason the market's going downhill is because the rates are too high. Well, we haven't raised those fees for several years, so that's not the case. And actually, most of the traders will tell you the fees are not the issue, it's the footfall. So tackling fees is one thing that is in our control. What we need to do probably as a committee is to address how we try and increase footfall in the future, but that's another agenda item. So the proposal at the moment is to create a grid system. And we would look at £12.50 per 3 metre by 3 metre grid for a casual trader and £10 for a regular trader. Now, I've spoken to some of our traders, some of our regular traders, because they're the people that you want to continue with their support. And actually, it doesn't make much difference to them. But what it does do is it makes it nice and clear to those potential casual traders that might want to come along. We have actually had a couple of inquiries recently, so in the next couple of weeks, I know we used to have John as the key cutter. He retired, and there is someone else that's inquired. I'm not sure whether they've taken over his business or pulled him out, but certainly there will be a key cutter that comes to Thetford market in the next few weeks. And there's been a couple of other traders that have expressed an interest to come along and give it a go. So hopefully, we will see a few more stalls, certainly on a Tuesday, which is where we really need them. But this is the proposal to change the fee structure, to bring in the grid system. The other thing is also to tackle the waste issue. And I know Alan said that we can't really tell whether the market use is too big. Well, we can, because we put the bins in a compound and we pull them out specifically for events. So we can determine how much is used. So it is a considerable amount of use that we have through very limited traders. So is there an argument that for those specifically needing the waste service, they should pay an additional fee?
Brent, you want to come in before we address that?
I was going to say to you, you must have checked with what other markets do, and to see what their trend is. Do they pay extra for the rubbish? Because to me, I can't see why any trader can't take their rubbish home, because when you get home, if their waste for that day, I don't know what their waste might be, but their waste for that day could actually just be taken up the skip, couldn't it, themselves, their local skip.
If they did that, they pay trade waste. Yeah. That's their problem.
What, in their car?
No, they wouldn't.
No,
Because it's quite a bit, some of them. I mean, the fruit and veg on a Saturday is a huge stall. So when they, so cardboard alone will take up half of those bins, at least half of those bins, if not more. And then you've got all the vegetable waste, because, they're presenting them. So it is, I mean, the other user is the fishmonger, and they, they lay out all their product, and then they have to dispose. And I've spoken to both of those. Now, the fruit and veg on a Saturday, several years ago, they trade at various different markets, as they all do. Fakenham was one that stopped waste and gave it back to the trader. And I said, look, there's two options we've got. We could do that, or we might have to charge an additional fee for waste. And both the fruit and veg and the fishmonger said, I'm quite happy to pay the waste service fees as long as I'm able to do it, because it's a pain in the backside to take it away.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because to me, rather than say we will increase your fees, we say we're going down a different route that, we're sorry, we don't want to increase your fees, but we do need you to pay for the waste.
So I think so you're absolutely right. So the proposal is that we understand the difficult times we're in. We understand that collectively we've got to do a lot more work to try and increase footfall to improve their trading. So we're not proposing to put up the fees as such. We're just calculating it a different way. And again, I measured Mandy Richardson, who does the sort of pan products and things, and I think the difference between it was about £2 on the size of her stall. So the grid system's not going to make a massive amount of difference, and she was quite happy with that. But what we are doing is, if people need a specific additional service, only they pay for it.
Yeah.
So she's not paying for waste that she doesn't use. you know, Ali, the clothing guy, he doesn't, you know, he's not paying. So I think we're being specific. The only thing we're raising is these additional charges, but in their own.
But would be careful, because if one filled a whole bin and the others are paying.
But they're not. It will only be targeted.
No, what I'm saying is, say you said to all the traders, right, it's £5 each way. So I'm just giving an example. So you're saying for the 3 traders that are willing to pay for their waste, it's £5 each.
Yeah.
But actually, somebody only uses the bottom of that bin and they're paying £5. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to call it.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so
But
I'll get them together.
I'd be more annoyed if I was a clothing trader and I don't use those bins.
Oh, no, don't expect to pay something like
I think
that.
we're so maybe we have to look at the levels then, maybe,
Yeah, see who uses.
or
those.
even, one of the traders actually said that, you know, they would be prepared to pay for the bin because they have, you know,
If it's there, if
they do not want us to take away the waste service.
So in terms of the proposal on the grid system, I think there's been discontent in moving towards that. The waste charge, obviously, we need to address. Are you looking for partial recovery of our costs?
Yeah.
I presume. And
But if there's excessive use, then maybe we need to have a second tier.
Hmm.
So if someone, I mean, I think I need to have a conversation with Mr. Seekins, who's the fruit veg guy, who will fill a whole bin and say, look, you know, obviously your use is, you know, is not, is considerable. So I think we need to have a second tier for him. I mean, this will not come into effect until April because our reviews.
But presumably we can't adopt this unless we know what numbers you're
No,
going to.
so whether if it's something that you want me to, I can have a conversation this weekend.
I think that would be
Bring it
useful.
back next month.
Bring
So
it back next
we can defer this one.
Work on the basis that we're going to move to the grid system for the fees.
Yeah.
And we need you to have further work with the, on the charges for.
Yeah.
On fish,
Wage.
so, a lot of it's just ice, isn't it?
A lot of it is ice in the containers that they bring.
And then it's the product,
Yeah.
they start.
The ice, to be honest,
Put down the drain.
well, what they do is they leave the ice in the containers at the back of the store in the summer and it's melted by the end of the day. So they just, you know,
Tip them out.
they still
The
have,
styrofoam.
yeah, they still have the containers that they bring to fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I did have a conversation with them and say, look, this is a recyclable product.
Right.
Take it back to the fish market. I'm sure they'll love it. But
But they don't want
they want to dispose of it.
Okay, so we'll park that until
Yeah.
next month. Thank you.
Right.
370. Annual review of hire fees, venue hire fees.
So again, I think we're getting a lot of interest in terms of hiring the venues. I think we've got our hire rates right compared to most venues. We are there or thereabouts. There's not many. We're certainly not more expensive than most of the venues our size. But we are picking up a lot of inquiries and bookings for the future because we are very competitive. Again, the biggest area that we are seeing, and you saw it reflected in the finances earlier, is that we are obliged to pay the PRS charges for music events. So PRS changed the rules a few years ago to put the onus on the venues to pay those, and if they didn't collect it from the hirers, then that was their business. Because a touring band is not going to put the effort into paying the royalties, so they've changed the rules. But it is considerable because it's based, again, they change the rules all the time, and the latest one is that you pay 2% of your gross ticket sales. Now, some of these tribute bands are charging, say, 15 quid a ticket, and if they're getting 200 people there, that's £3,000 that we're paying 2% of. I mean, it could be considerable. So again, if you at the quality of the acts that are coming in, that could rise. Depends on the attendances. That could rise. I mean, there's some that's charging £20 for some of the tributes. So again, the percentage that we have to pay rises with it. So I think what we do is, again, to try and recoup some of that money, we have the scalable proposal that I put in, and we take that money right at the outset and calculate it with the hire. So the hire could be £30 an hour for a weekend. If you're looking at your target capacity is 200 and your ticket price is this, we know how much the PRS rates will be, and we charge them accordingly.
Yeah.
So we recoup the money. And I think that's only fair because, again, similar to the market traders, if on block we raise the higher fees, those
People that don't have music are paying for it.
they are paying for it, and I think it will be detrimental on our hire.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of doing things.
It's funny because we had one tribute band that contacted us. They are coming next year, Legends of Motown, which is a big show. They asked the question. They said, "What about PRS? Do we pay or do you pay?" And we said, well, at this moment in time, we pay, but it might be that we change the rules. I think they would just be into the new proposals. So, and that's likely to be a reasonable price ticket. And I think it would be quite a good seller because it's an act that I'm really pleased to come into the Carnegie. So I think hopefully it'll be a good mover. We could end up with a big bill.
You need a decision on that one, because I would go with that, the good system.
Well, we do need it to see, it's in our terms of reference, so we can resolve.
So we're not looking to increase the hire fee, just to add a PRS charge for those that have.
Yeah. So in the proposed document, it was that scalable addition.
Yeah.
Mike, you were coming.
I wouldn't want to make it any more difficult to attract acts unless we're absolutely overwhelmed with people desiring to come. I've been trying to do some sums on my head. If I remember the audience and the charge that each tune, I think it would probably work out that as member dollars you pay about £4 for every tune you hear. If a band plays, they come out with 15 in the course of an evening. Now, I don't think that's going to put people off. I don't think people are going to say, okay, that percentage of my ticket means that it's not worth me coming. So there's a huge issue in the business about the whole issue of how people get ripped off. And of course, it's true that you can listen on YouTube for the same tune for nothing. But YouTube's not much of an experience to be honest, is it? I would err on the side of caution myself and say we will continue to pay the charge unless we get so many requests for bookings that we can pick and choose and they'll pay it anyway. That's just an opinion.
So, Brenda's happy to support David's proposal. Mike's obviously against that.
What do you think the actual charge should be then? Just say I was having a live concert there all night long.
So if I was so I was bringing a musical show to the Carnegie, and I was looking and did get an audience of a couple of hundred, and I was charging £15 a ticket, then what's the difference? Because they'll probably need a 7-hour hire. So a 7-hour hire on a Saturday night is £210 at our current rate that we're proposing not to change. I think they're probably putting that up 60 quid to pay for the additional PRS charges when they're probably going to gross, £2,500 to £3,000.
No,
I'm not talking about a massive difference.
I'll stick with me
But
though.
for us, if we're going to have 20 or 30 of these shows a year, because that's,
We have
we
to
want to
make on
go,
them costs.
that's going to be a decent sum of money for us to absorb.
Fine.
We could.
I would support the proposition. So it's to be honest, it's actually the total that matters.
Yeah.
Not how you break it down. If we are charging, if we put up our charge now, by whatever means, whether it's by passing on that charge or by saying we're putting our charges at about 5%, it's a question of whether it affects our ability to draw. they're willing to come, then, okay, putting up by that 40 or 50 quid, whatever it is, it's not a huge amount, as you rightly say, but I'm just concerned that we've actually established a really good quality right?
Yeah.
Really good quality. For a town outside, between teachers all work very well.
Yeah.
And I think we're proud of that. And I think it's a great thing. And I don't want to say anything different.
So David, you're at the sharp end, you feel that they would accommodate that?
I think some of these bigger bands would, and I mean, we're not talking about, you know, the local choral groups and people like that. We're not talking about those. We're talking about these big touring shows that are coming in, that are charging a reasonable sum of ticket money that people are paying because they want to see these kind of shows. And I don't think that's going to make much difference to whether they come to the Carnegie or not. They get a lot of added value into the Carnegie where they do pay other charges at other venues. So we do a lot of support work with. So I think, you know, for those big ticket shows, I think if we could recoup some of the money, it just helps our budget to reinvest in improving the facilities.
I think we have to, at the end of the day, we have to trust our officers. I think David would suggest this if he thought the impact is the Carnegie room to come down here within 6 months.
No.
You know,
All the big dinner dances, all the wedding receptions, all of those,
Yeah.
they don't, that's not a requirement. It is just,
So,
yeah.
Well, I don't know, because with a wedding reception, actually they all these extra charges come in. I'm hiring the room, yeah, but can I have this? Yeah, that's so and so, that's so and so. You know, they break down everything, don't they?
Yeah.
so Brendan, are you happy to propose?
I am happy to propose this.
So all is in favour?
Well, I think I'm in favour because I think I'm sure.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's carried. Just a question in the development wedding side.
Yeah.
Is that a standard fee for the hire of the event? And if you want to dress it with our tablecloths and things like that, just
So one thing that we did discuss within the team is that, and we've all been victims of this if you're old enough to have kids and things like that. When you book a venue, one thing we really didn't want to do is be one of these venues that if I booked that hall, I would pay £10, £15, £20, whatever that rate is for that particular room. Just because I use that magic word wedding reception, suddenly the fees jump. We didn't do that. So basically we break down the package completely. If they want to come in and do everything, bring in their own caterers and things like that, and they abide by the food hygiene rules and stuff, basically they'll still pay that normal higher fee. But what we've done is we've put together some additional packages that they can purchase if they want. So if they want us to dress the room, or want us to, I mean, we've just got a sweet cart, things like that. If they want those additional, there's a package that they can say, yes, we'll have that, yes, we'll have that, yes, we'll have that. If it's just a bog standard venue hire, whether it's a wedding reception or something else, it's still the same rate. I don't think we should go down that route. I really don't.
good.
That's great.
Okay, moving on then.
Yeah.
37122, our priorities for the next financial year. David and I had this discussion yesterday about what they are. And along the guidelines of you set your priorities and you want to identify where the money's coming from, but we've got a slide. So I don't know if we want to just trot in what we thought as ideas.
So we
wait for Dennis to come back.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Linking to on the agenda item, but we've got heritage town events. So in terms of the promotion, in
town events tomorrow.
Yeah.
Have we got ideas? Obviously, there's a bit of crossover in terms of
Yeah, so I mean, venues and communications is responsible for all of the communications for the town council, whatever it be. So it could be just the statutory stuff that we have to advertise for the town council.
just mindful of what we had for the Jubilee. We've now got a coronation on the horizon.
Well,
Learning from experiences.
yeah, so one of the actions for tomorrow's meeting is that we have to present what we're going to do as the town event. So we did agree that we were going to have marketplace activities, so a programme throughout most of the year. And then 2 specific areas, which was Heritage Festival in September, which also includes HOBS type activities, and then Christmas light switch on. So we put together a schedule of events that primarily will be on the marketplace. And then the 6th of May is now the King's coronation. So one thing we will have to talk about is where does that fit? Is that to be classed as a town event? And what are we going to do? Is there additional funding that we might have to, or can we just assume it's going to come out of the allocation of the town event? So there's a conversation around that, but it's also really what do you want to do? I mean, I know we had all the questions about did we do it well enough with the Jubilee, but the Jubilee was a party, it was a celebration. The coronation is a specific event, and how do you celebrate that? Now, clearly, you want to celebrate, or some people want to celebrate the coronation of the new king, but how do we do that? Jane, actually, she's going to present a couple of ideas tomorrow, so we need to talk around that. But I think in terms of, so it depends whether we just want to have a party on the marketplace and, or we have more of a sort of.
You could just do, you don't have to have the party, really, do you? You can just have
More of a.
the town dressed up.
Or even do that, yeah.
Union Jacks flying everywhere, or whatever it is that we put up.
Sorry, I've forgotten. Is there a month, do we know a month when it's going to happen?
It's going to be the 6th
It's
of May.
going to happen, it's going to happen.
They've released it, yes.
It's election.
Yeah.
5 minutes of mail.
Saturday, and none of us might be seeing it.
But it'll be before the election.
Elections May.
Mine.
It was 4th, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
2 days
I
later.
think.
So all these towns of people, beers and this go.
With your indulgence, I mean, was it the time to have a meal out? I was thinking, it's March, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
If you're lucky.
Again, we don't really, we don't want to go down the same route as the Jubilee.
Anyway, that's for tomorrow. Yeah. Discuss that one.
Dennis is now returned, so we've got
So the conversation around community priorities, Stuart's right, it's sort of agreeing where we would like our, where our support should be as a committee. The funding bit comes afterwards, and it is to identify appropriate funding. We clearly haven't got, so if we was to say recommend we continue to commit to the repairs of the Guildhall, specifically the Twin Towers. We've just had a report back literally today, which identifies, as we knew already, that there's some significant repairs to be made. I won't go into too much about that, because that will be something Tina will share.
Question on that, we've done to that one. Does that include that window that I said the other day is going to fall down?
So the thing that's been identified in the survey is the water tower. So it's the Twin Towers, water tower, clock tower. They're the Twin Towers. Both of those need repairs. One more clock tower, more so than the water tower, and the little dormer windows above the porch. Again, that's really important repair. So those 3 things have been identified that we should. Now, they were already highlighted in the grant when we had the Guildhall Heritage Hub grant from the NHLF. There is some money set aside to do some of those, but clearly, there's a lot of repairs to be done. So we need now to identify appropriate funding to do that. but I think we need to formally probably propose that that's something that we focus on. Commit to the venues events schedule. So we've already allocated £3,000 in this year's budget. We have that sum of money where we seed our own events, if you like, hopefully to make a profit. So we don't technically use it. We've got that money to reinvest in the next one. But again, commit to continuing that process because we want to develop the kind of things that's on that poster. And then thirdly, a commitment to continued improvement of the marketplace. So again, we've put a bid in for our multidisciplinary team, which will come together to put together, a bid for a heritage master plan. And part of that will be various different consultation events, and hopefully the culmination of that will be them formally putting in a bid for the heritage master plan funding. And part of that would be the marketplace. Now we have certain small amounts of money to invest in the marketplace. We've put some planters in already. We're talking to the district council to try and get some support from them. But I think again that should be an ongoing commitment that we make to improving the marketplace. We had a conversation yesterday, Stuart and I, about the marketplace, and Stuart said, there's still some negative talk about whether we should have done it. But I honestly can tell you that the feedback that we get is more than the negative. People are, even though they would love to see more activity there, we are mindful of that, and we are addressing that for next year with Heritage Town events tomorrow. People are really pleased that that's not a car park, that's a safer space to walk across and use. We can use it better. We understand that. But honestly, I don't think the tea room would have been successful in its development if that was a car park.
No,
I really don't. Forget the outside tables and chairs. Literally, when people were walking off the bottom step, there was a danger. And from that perspective alone, we've really improved that space.
I think if you look back to putting steps up the Castle Hill, if you look back to changing the location of the bus station, we got head on wheels with those suggestions. Who says now there shouldn't be steps at the Castle Hill?
Well, do you know what, Mike? As I mentioned earlier, I had a cup of tea on Sunday at the kiosk. Well, we had a little walk round. We thought we'd have a breath of fresh air walk round. We went up to Castle Park. We sat on the bench on the back part of the park, and a couple of people came down those steps. We saw them up there, and she said, "We're going up there," laughing because there's no way I could get my wife walking up those steps. But these people walked past us, and we said, "Nice view, was it?" "Oh, absolutely fantastic. Haven't been up that hill for years. Beautiful, brilliant." They wouldn't have gone up. I mean,
Well, you wouldn't have, not when you get to a certain age.
So
unless you really.
So I think, it is. So I think really this commitment is us being mindful that yes, we've made that first step. Yes, we've seen some first phase advantages, safety being one of them, but it's just that extra commitment to continue to improve it.
And we did do the consultation, and if we were spending big money on things that are controversial, there's no reason why we couldn't have consultation. And I think surfacing it and putting into Thetford so far, no one's going to argue about that.
Yeah, I can see why you've got them priorities because they've been there.
Are there any suggestions?
Oh, then I thought there was always.
No, this is open.
But so I agree with them. You said because they're all the big things that need to be done. What happens to there's 2 points here. What happens to the glass doors that was going to go on the front? Is that still, or is that in
Of the
heritage?
building or porch?
Yeah, I'm just thinking because we're going into winter now, and we need to leave them doors open, but then you get the crafts in the tea room or the.
Yeah. So one, it is a very costly thing to do.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I had so Nick and I had the Heritage Building Officer, Bretton Council over the other day, and we walked him around the marketplace and asked him various different questions about what we might do. What was his concerns, if he had any? He was quite favourable for most of the stuff we wanted to do. But the cost of that is really high. Hence the fact that if you go into the tea room, you go into the large court as well, we've put those inner doors in.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will stop, you know, the draft coming through. But again, we do, and actually, we do have the big doors on door closers now. But the problem is if you close the big doors, it looks as if we're closed.
So on that, I think I would long term like to have some glass doors on there of some kind to stop the people using the porchway. You've got like these are gates.
Yeah.
But in the way the energy's going, to have some doors, glass doors there, would cut a bit of the loss. In the short term, I think you need to probably shut the doors, but have a notice tea room open or something like that on there, because you can't afford to have those doors open when it's really freezing time.
And the other point was, a few years ago, so I don't forget anything, a few years ago, we was talking about the frontage of the Carnegie. I know we've got the planters and the little voices, but we haven't really had an impact on that. For example, it is an example, handrail coming up them steps.
Yeah.
I know they can walk around the ramps, but you know, if everyone's charging around the ramp, they're all trying to come up the same way. And I've just thought the handrail up them steps, whether that's a priority thing or something that we just need to.
I think you probably just get on to do that when you don't, because you've
and a bar on the wall as you're coming up the steps. If you're coming round from the library, you need a little bar on that wall.
Yeah. So can I? So with the handrail, so you're coming up from the library way up those steps. So are you happy? Are you happy if the rail is fixed to the building? Or do you want it, to the Carnegie building, or do you want it so it's away? The reason I ask is because it would be a lot cheaper and easier to fix it to the building.
Well, I don't know if it's for a building.
Because at least you can steady yourself when you go up to the steps. And the other thing is that, so the steps leading from the Carnegie cut, that I call it, where the cars are parked by road-ins, up into the market area, the wall there is in a really poor condition. I mean, kids are always kicking the bricks off. The bricks have all blown. Again, that was one of the reasons to get Andrew across the other day. Everywhere else has got black railings around that area, and we're talking about taking that brickwork off and just extending the railings down. Once you've done it, they're not going to, they're going to be safe and secure.
Where are you talking about?
So, so in between the Guildhall and the Carnegie, you've got the little cut that goes down to the bridge.
No, the other one I was talking about, say I park right outside the doors of the Carnegie, and I'm going to come up them steps. There's nothing there.
No.
It means I've got to go the long way round.
Yeah. So so the point I was going to make is, while we're installing those rails there, we can install some rails.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's a priority. It's
thing that we can get on and do.
I'm not gonna.
There's you want to come in.
Yeah, have we still got the funding for the electric plugs in the lighting, and is that coming?
Yeah, it is coming. I mean, again, it's a case of, with all contractors, architects, surveyors, whoever you want to talk to, they've got such a massive backlog of work. So I'm in touch with the contractors, and they're just trying to schedule it in, to be honest. So yeah, it will get done.
Something I've been on about for a while.
Yeah, it will get done. I mean,
the emergency pool thing in the disabled toilet that is not there.
That's in the Guildhall.
In the Guildhall, there.
That's something.
It's a lovely disabled toilet, but it does not have an emergency pool cord. So if somebody gets problems in there, nobody will know.
Going forward, could it be a priority that we look at our electric in all areas, basically, so that if no one's in the room, we all do it. You do it at home. Well, you might not do it now because the electric bill, but the light's left on. But if you've got a sensor in there, it automatically goes on because there's nobody moving. You know, I'll take for example, you've left the Guildhall and you're going to walk across the bridge to the Carnegie, the lights are on. Actually, as you approach the first 3 steps that go up, the light comes on. When you go down the other side, they go off. It's a bit like some areas, I can't think, the street lights work that way. It don't come on until you're near that lamppost, which I thought was quite good. I can't remember where it was. But, you know, it's looking to the future because, you know, we all moan at people for leaving the lights on, but it still happens.
I think that to change lights, which we've experienced in the Guildhall, to move the panel upstairs was quite a costly thing. But I think as part of the Heritage Master Plan, one of the things you look at is to do some works with the Guildhall. We've got those horrendous strip lights in the large court as well. So I think that could come through in looking at that, because it's environmentally friendly, reducing the thing, replacing them with LEDs and doing it that way.
So a couple of things. Funny enough, we did have this conversation, Brenda, literally last week, and we've got our electrical contractors coming next week, and he will be looking at some of the communal areas where we can change them to those sensors. Because if you go into the toilets of the Guildhall, for instance, when we did the refurb, we introduced that. So as you go in, as you open the door, the lights come on, blah, blah, blah. It's very difficult to do that in the bigger rooms where you really are sucking up the energy consumption. So the main hall of the kitchen, you can't, you know, I don't think you can do that. We'll ask the contractors whether it's in, but he seems to think that changing some of the communal areas, some of the corridors and things like that, and is not a big thing. So we will look at doing some of that. But I think Stuart's right. I mean, especially if you look in the Guildhall, we've done so much work in there now. And then if you happen to look up to the biggest, best feature, in my opinion, of the Guildhall large court, and that's that domed ceiling.
Yeah.
You can still see those strip lights. It's awful. So again, you know, we're going to get into quote, so at least we know how much it's going to cost.
Yeah. Okay.
So just back to your priority day, I'm in tune with the idea of the, obviously it's a necessary evil. We've got to get the clock towers done. As you said, there's a bit of funding still left to go towards it, but quite clearly not enough. But also we do need to look at the external fabric of the build. So I tried to, can we look at the imminent repairs identified, as well as the addressing some of the deterioration of the external fabric.
On that, I saw some lovely pictures of the buildings lately, and but the one thing that's ruining it is on some of the sides, there's a lot of water staying down the side of the building.
So can I just expand on that? When we used to have on the Guildhall, we used to have the flower troughs that were window ledge level. We won't have those again. That's why we've got the lower ground level, because what was happening is when they were watering it with the feed, they were watering it until it sort of overflowed, and then the feed was leaching down the side of the building, and you know, and you if you look around the town, you know, where there's hanging baskets and things, you'll see some leaching down brick. I mean, it's not good. So hopefully we can get that tidied up at some point and washed, so we can get that staining off. So that's not going to happen.
Aesthetically, it would be a great improvement.
Just going back to what Stuart has said, when we had the survey of the Twin Towers, I mean, the Guildhall's got lots of different levels and roof pitches and things. So we once the surveyor left, we did get some of our staff who were trained in. There was a cherry picker operator there, but trained to go up. They looked at some of the other areas, and if on the Dad's Army side, Cage Lane side of the Guildhall, we looked at every single window. And again, some of them are at the point that if we leave them, we're going to have this kind of situation in a few years' time, where we haven't got the opportunity to repair and refurb. We'll be replacing, and that's going to be a whole. So again, I think you're right to extend it to other areas of that.
Yeah, and then obviously the marketplace thing, I think we're all bought into the idea that an improved service there would improve the look of it and make it more usable. So
we haven't got the money to do that, but there is conversations being had which may address that. So I think that should be a priority to keep that discussion going and try and source it, because there may be certain elements, like the electric points and that, where different funding sources come through to do little bits and pieces, rather than just the big resurfacing. But I think a broader thing of continuing the development of for all of the events going forward.
Yeah.
And then your other one was the seed funding thing. Well, I think, do we expand that to say with a view to getting further use or acts in developing the use, because you've talked about the wedding side for the Guildhall, let's keep that ball rolling, because I think that's an income stream which would be really useful if we do get that going. So rather than just keeping it your 3K seed funding, yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
But look to further enhance usage of the Carnegie and Guildhall complex. Okay. Are we happy?
Yeah.
And that's a bit woolly, but I think.
Well, sometimes you say, oh, you only want a couple. I think the last one I done on the amenities was Thomas Place, actually, wasn't it? And that's still being worked on. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, it's something that you're working towards.
So we're happy with that? Thank you. Next one then, though. Environment strategy contribution.
So this is something the town clerk wanted to go on every committee's agendas, and there was a couple of suggestions that came out just to get the discussion process going. So using biodegradable packaging for takeout purchases, reviewing the improved recycling on glass, cardboard and paper, explore renewable energy options for the Carnegie, and then the drinking water trough to reinstate and promote. So, so just picking up on some of those before we expand on those possibly. Biodegradable packaging, we're already starting to use some of those. So all the takeaway cups and all that we use, some of our outlets, they're all biodegradable packaging. The straws are all paper, they're not plastic straws anymore. So we have looked at some of those, but we'll continue to look and improve those. Recycling on glass and cardboard and paper, we're looking to, we're talking to a completely different provider on the waste, because the ironic thing is with our provider at the moment is it all goes into the same.
It's not yourself.
No, so it's not. Even if we wanted it to, it's not. If you go into our Carnegie kitchen, we have bins in there where we have paper and cardboard, we have, plastics, we have food waste. So we do that internally, but then there's no means of continuing that to take away. So we're talking to a contractor at the moment to come in and give us a cost of whether we switch or not. So we are looking into doing that. The energy renewables, again, we have changed all our lighting to LEDs now. We are insulating the Carnegie roof as we speak. So again, they're telling us that prior to the work they're going to be doing, literally the Carnegie roof was a thin board with the felting on top. Now it's statutorily needed to have a insulation gap, and the vast roof space that is across the main hall, they're already telling us that's going to make a massive difference to our energy bills. So so that will be an improvement. But again, long term, we've had a structural engineer up there to say that if we were to go down the solar panel route and take that big leap of faith, that's not going to happen for a year or two to even consider that at the moment. Is it strong enough to do that? I mean, if you've ever been in the Carnegie and look at the roof space, those joists going across are massive. So to hold, solar panels, there's no problem there. It's just the cost that it's going to cost. Well, Tina came back from a meeting the other day and said that there's improvements all the time on, the solar panels, and it depends on your return period. And there's a local business in the town that's just installed them. And they've worked out that they can recoup their investment within 3 years. So it might be something that we look at. But at least we're going to have the opportunity to do that if we want to. So we're looking to install motion sensor lighting in such areas as the Carnegie toilets and things. So that's good. So, and the drinking trough was part of the Guildhall Heritage bid. Again, our last little bit, Nick's got one of the stonemasons coming in because the bit that they're all struggling with is to drill the supply hole through the trough. It's causing a bit of an issue. But
Was it already there?
well, I thought we were there. We've got everything else in place. It's just getting that final pipe up to connect the push button water dispenser. It's just getting through that thick. But he's got someone who's coming in to do it. So again, that will be done. It's one of the things that we need to do. So again, that will be reinstated very soon.
Going back to the Carnegie, and we're talking about the energy efficient, because obviously your ceiling is where all the heat goes. So I think the insulation nowadays is about this deep and in your roof space. Is the Carnegie got are them walls insulated or weren't they built at the time that they?
No, they're not.
So is that something that we could look into? Because they would go around the building, wouldn't they? And that's it, yeah. Because my house at the moment, believe it or not, it's like an oven. People come and say it's boiling in there. So I haven't got the heating on. They say you must have. So I haven't. And it's because the house has got insulated so well. I don't know. 20 years.
When the guys came round, the roof is the number one.
Yeah.
Next one is the windows, because they're only single glazed, and the stairwells, again, behind those fascia boards is windows, single glazed windows.
Yeah.
So, so in-house, we're going to seal and insulate all the stairwell windows. So that will be an improvement because, you know, you know about it.
Well, I know
it's just those big windows in the Carnegie that we need to look at. But again, you know, I think, that will be the next thing that we need to look at.
But is that something we can get prices on? Because you sometimes get these energy grants or green grants for rising. And if you see something, you know, you've got 10, up to 10, and you've got a price, you know, you're in that park to go for.
Yeah.
Same price, I think it'd be useful.
Might get a grant off a Norfolk County Council, you never know. I know
There was one that I rang up about, and they said, "Is you're a council?" No.
Oh.
But that's not to say that there's not ones out there.
I think the price would be useful.
Elizabeth.
But is there any other that you want to add to those? Or I think that's fairly. Yeah.
Actually do in the short term, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
That's 373 then. Do I need to move standing orders or past 2 hours?
Oh, yeah, we are, yeah.
Are we happy to move standing orders to continue this enthralling meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Note that, Karen. 373.
I've done that. It's done.
No, this is the forecast budget.
Thank you.
Basically, what we want to do is simplify the budget a bit more rather than have every element of it, that we will have headline areas such as hospitality venue, hire, venue events. And then we can break them down for increased scrutiny if we need to. So we'll have subcodes that we can from time to time concentrate on Guildhall Tea Room, Stroke Bar, or the Carnegie Bar, for instance. So I think Alan said that, yes, we can do that. So it's going to make it a lot more accurate for us when we get income, but more importantly, when we generate the expenditure, that we post it to the right area. And we get those accurate budgets or accurate accounts back to yourselves every meeting. And again, on the expenditure side, there will be a lot more relevant, broken down into those areas of purchases and expenses. So what we've done in terms of, let me just get my notes out. So what I've tried to do is to go back pre-COVID. So 2018-19, I looked at some of the budget data that was from that period. And again, whereas the Carnegie bar at the moment is forecast at £36,000 per annum, we've raised that to 42. And is that a realistic figure? Well, yes, we did that in 2018-19. So I think some of these figures have got historical relevance to them. They're not unrealistic. It just means the risk that we are taking is if we delve back into any kind of restriction, it will impact on this forecast budget. Having said that, COVID sort of took us all by surprise for obvious reasons, different. If it happened that we had some kind of total lockdown, but if we had restrictions in the future, I think we're better equipped now to cope with that. For instance, the marketplace is closed down. We are looking to see whether we can resurrect marquees just on grass, and we're going to be trialling that this Friday. And if we can, some of these events can be taken. So when we had that halfway house with COVID, and you could do a lot more events outside, by the time this kicks in, if we need to, at least it won't be a total shutdown. We'll take some of these events outside and we'll put them into marquees and we'll operate the bar outside. So there is an element of trying to generate the income. So it's not going to be a total, this is it, or it's an absolute devastation as it was at the beginning of the year as we try to get back out of COVID. So I think we've challenged ourselves and upped it slightly in terms of the bar income, the Carnegie hire. Again, we've broken that down into the Carnegie and Guildhall, so we can see after the improvements we've made to the Guildhall, what is the return. Before it was just all pitched in as the Guildhall complex, and both of the venues were in there. But again, in 2018-19, we made gross £38,000 at the Guildhall complex. So again, to raise it to £40,000 is certainly not unrealistic. We could have probably challenged ourselves a bit more on that. The Market Square, 16,000. With the weekly markets, we have got to look at trying to do other activities and other events on there to generate that kind, because as we've seen, the trend is a downturn for the weekly markets, and I'm not too sure how we promote that in a way to try and increase that. There are only a couple of towns in this area that are bucking the trend, and in my opinion, there are reasons for that. So, for instance, Swaff is probably the most successful one in our area as a weekly market. But if you go to Kings Lynn, they've not got a very big market at all, if anything. So there is no real alternative for traders to go to. But we do need to do more events. And the steampunk event that we held in September was an absolute success. And it absolutely, I think even now, it's the biggest trading day for the Guildhall Tea Room. But if you talk to some of the traders, even though they really enjoyed the buzz around the Market Square, it did increase the footfall, but there were one or two traders that didn't see that reflected in their takings that particular day. But they are very supportive of us doing more stuff like that. So I think that might help in the future. Certainly the steampunk traders on the day of the stalls are keen to come back, and we are looking, and we'll talk about this tomorrow in Heritage and Town Events, to do a Victoriana festival. So it's everything about Victorian Thetford. So we could talk about the Minses and the Burrells and all the rest of it, as well as a steampunk element to bring in those people that enjoyed the last event. So it is what it is in terms of the forecast budget. We have increased certain areas of it. I have sort of taken into account that we would agree the PRS, and that has been reduced from what you saw in the previous budget. I think already this year, I think it was £3,000 for PRS. So we've reduced that down to 2, because clearly we'll have to pay PRS on our own events that we are looking to deliver more so next year. So we will have to pay some money in PRS, but we'll get the benefits from it. We have put staff uniforms in there, and again, that's something that's never come out of our individual budget, funny enough. But again, we've only put a small amount in, but I think that's something that all the staff are asking for, that we need to have more staff uniforms for events, so heighten our professionalism. Maintenance and repairs, again, very high this year because we've done a lot of servicing and checks and upgrades. But again, this £2,000 reflects the ongoing annual servicing of, and also a little bit of contingency if we need to repair something like a broken toilet or something like that.
Do you think that's enough, Dave?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Comments? Are we happy to?
Yeah, where do you get £2,000 from?
For
Sponsorship. Who's
because
I'm only asking.
the reason I put two, because it's something that's always been on our budgets, with 0 against it. So it goes all the way back to when Centre Parks was our main sponsor for town events, and that was several years ago. But I must admit, someone's clearly thinking that we're doing a decent job, because in the last 3 or 4 weeks, we've had several different companies that have come forward and said, we'd like to sponsor activities and events. So we have a couple of companies that are going to sponsor Christmas lights. Are also going to put a few £100 into Halloween, which was just an additional event that we just want to throw out there and do. So I think there's an element of companies that are going to come forward. So £2,000 is not extortionate. I mean, you know, we've got £1,500 for Christmas light switch on from companies. So I think it was just something I just wanted to put in there just to sort of.
Yeah, I think that's good, but then now we need to say, if the companies want it, how do we advertise that they sponsor these events? And I think that's important, because if people are like, we've just gone to a company and they're quite happy to provide us with 30 of these items that we want. But, you know, can you promote it? And I said, well, not till after the event, because you can't do that. And they go, no, that's fine. As long as they are getting promotion.
Recognition for it.
So the other thing is, Dave, would this sit in this, if we're talking about Christmas light switch on, would be a town event, presumably, would the sponsorship not sit with that town event costs?
No, because with heritage and town events, it is an expenditure budget really. So we have attributed X amount to Christmas light switch on. So any income we make off that, we don't put it into heritage town events for some reason. But because sponsorship, you're right, sponsorship, the first thing I ask is, what do you want for your money?
Yeah.
You know, because I don't want to get into an argument that we've given you X amount and actually we didn't really get any return. So I like to get that up front. What is their expectations? And then we can put a package together, because obviously you have to absorb something. If you're going to do banners and things like that, then, you know. So it's more of a communication thing, marketing communication. So that's, but if you want to argue that tomorrow, that we have if it comes out if it comes out with town event, then it should sit in heritage and town events.
But if it's your team who's been generating the income,
If you're sponsored to do something, does it matter what committee is actually doing it? It's the council overall that it's going towards whatever because they must tell you what they want it to go towards. They don't say, oh, it's £2,000. So they say, oh, I want it for the lights.
I don't think we're ever going to get, not certainly at this moment in time, we're ever going to get anyone to come back and say we want to be the overall sponsor. I think they're going to be very targeted too. But we've got plenty of events that we deliver now, so.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think you can just leave it general at this point, because it might be you just doing an event on the well-being thing on the marketplace, or like that, and it's just a contribution towards those events. So we have to adopt that as our budget proposal.
I'm just out of being sick. The very last line of all, a net profit of 83,000.
Well, that's it.
I'm hoping you're going to say, well, I imagine you're going to say, oh, no, it's not like that. For example, just for my ignorance again, if we would have to resurface the market square, who would pay for that? Is that coming out of venues, or is it somebody else on the committee?
I think you also got to be mindful, like this is under the old format.
Yeah.
You've got no salary costs or anything.
So
earmarked.
so actually, net,
It's a contribution to.
net is the wrong term there. That's your bottom line in terms of this. But then if you're going to adopt, our quarterly view of venues and communications as to what Alan delivered earlier, that's just an element of it. Now, this has to come out. But it's an increase in what we forecast this year. So it's moving forward. And I think it's, in the right circumstances, that's easily deliverable. So hopefully we'll be able to achieve more than that.
So we're happy to that will then go forward to be incorporated within finances deliberations. Next thing.
So community.
3/7/22, community engagement.
So I personally, can I just offer up one thing? And you're going to say this anyway. I know it doesn't kick in until April, but just to get us back, to get some movement back, the naysayers, is we have taken the decision again not to raise the market fee. That's a positive step, and actually venue fees as well. I don't think we have to delve too much into the additional services because that's specific to a trader. If they want it, they can have it. If they don't, they don't. Yeah. What we haven't done as a town council, again, in the committee, is we haven't raised our venue fees. We still consider them to be very competitive. And we haven't raised our market fees for the 4th year running. And in 8 years, we've only ever raised them once.
So I'm happy to do that, but I also think you need to add on to the market side as a marketing job to say, well, we've now looked to simplify the way we're costing it. And the casual trader can
So we welcome all the
cost
inquiries.
if you have a gazebo there. And so people know outwardly if they are interested in doing a craft store.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to cost them.
Yeah.
So,
It's a good advert to put out, actually. We have not increased our costs. If you are still interested in, come along with.
I think we look to simplify the things. So,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Hey, 3/7/4 then, committee officers update. Had a good run, haven't you? Thank you. So, and thank you all for your attendance and patience for getting through.
Yeah, you're not supposed to go home time,